Hello and welcome to today's SCI webcast, Solving Current Cyber Challenges, Academic and Industry Collaboration. We want to thank everyone for joining us today and taking an hour with us to hear this presentation. My name is Shane McGraw. I'm the Outreach Team Lead here at the Software Engineering Institute, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending. Today I'm joined by panelists from industry and academia around the country. And first, I would like to introduce Ebony Samavong. Ebony, please introduce yourself and your role at Booz Allen.
Hi, I'm Ebony Samavong. I'm a lead associate for our commercial cyber practice. I'm a CTI professional, and I build and operationalize cyber threat intelligence programs.
Great, thank you for joining us today, Ebony. Next, we have Angel Kodawahu. Angel, please introduce yourself and your studies at the University of Tennessee.
My name is Angel Kodawahu. I graduated from my master's in 2017, and I work for NSF, National Science Foundation funded project for network situational awareness platform called Insight2 for a couple of years. And I started my PhD last year in computer engineering with a concentration in cybersecurity.
Terrific, Angel. Thank you for being here with us today. Next, we have an SCI staff member, Tim Schimmel. Tim, please introduce yourself and your role at the SCI.
Hi, I'm a senior member of technical staff serving in the situational awareness team with an interest in developing or using network situational awareness solutions and in seeing collaborations and communities of interest emerge.
Terrific. Thank you, Tim. Last but not least, we have another SCI staff member, Timur Snook. So Timur, please introduce yourself and what you do at the SCI.
My name is Timur Snook. I'm a senior network defense analyst at the SCI. I've been in industry for years and worn many hats, and now I'm working under the Threat Analysis Directorate at the SCI.
Great, terrific, thank you. I want to remind everyone, we want to make today as interactive as possible, so you can type in questions there in the YouTube chat. We will address as many questions as we can. Also, there's a comment section below. You can put in comments there as well. So we're going to start the presentation now. I'm going to turn it over to Angel. So Angel, all yours.
So when we talk about industry and academia collaboration, we're actually not talking differences. We all have a common goal. The goal being what we want to bring to the community, what we want to develop, try to find solutions for current and future cyber problems. And academia brings the theory part where we're focused on theory, algorithms, and industry focus on more of the problem, solution, and the client, what the clients need, and that kind of requirement. And later slides, we'll talk about more of the differences, but we want to start with that we have a common goal, and we won't stick directly to the points on the slide, so we want to make it a conversation with all four of us. I want to give a little bit of background of the four of us. We all met at FlowCon, and Ebony and I have been collaborating since 2019. We met at 2019 FlowCon, and Tim, we met 2020 FlowCon, and we've known each other before, and we started more collaboration by Tim being my dissertation committee member as well. So Timur, and he's giving me advice in the validation of my work. So we all collaborate, and the foundation has been FlowCon. So starting with the common goal, let's move on to the different focus. So academia is mostly focused on more abstract, more general solution oriented, where academia is more looking for the merit of our work through publication and citation. And we are mostly solution and theory driven, and the industry, and Ebony will elaborate on this, is more problem driven. And I want to give a little bit of context for our industry audience. When you're coming from the academic world, we mostly want to do our research and publish papers. And these papers are the avenue that we communicate with the world, with other researchers, with the industry. So to give a little bit of how it differs from the industry. So we show what the others have done. We write a paper and do presentations at conferences. We show our motivation for doing what we did and what are the data sets that we used that existed and the data that we generated, all the graphs, the code, where to find them. And we compare the accuracies of the other solutions. And we really sometimes can get bogged down in very focused topics. For example, sometimes we focus on getting a 98.9 accuracy to 99.99% accuracy. So industry can really help us get more focused on getting more a general picture what's going on, so to speak, have a finger in the pulse of the commercial world. So what are your thoughts on that, Ebony?
So for me, let's back up just a little bit. When I met you in 2019 at FlowCon, one of the first things I was looking for was what was missing from my day to day. I was looking to see, what was the, theories that are coming out, how did academia view, cybersecurity, in theory and also in practice, and what were the things that they were working on. But one of the major differences that I started to see was also kind of our motivations, right? Like you talked about, obviously for private industry, the bottom line is everything. If there's something that you want to work on or do, if it can't be profitable, people are not going to stay behind it. So, one of the things that I was very interested in when you came to me, especially with your particular research, was my first question to you was, how do we take what you're doing and actually make it commercially applicable? So, and that was, I think, the first time we started noticing the differences between where we were coming from. I think the quote you used for me was, hey, I want to, focus on building something novel. And I said, yeah, but can we take it to market? Like, do you know where you sit, in the market? Do you know that what you're building is a value add to the market, or are you unfortunately reproducing something that's already there? So I think that that's where we started, because again, different focuses. We talked about, who your actual target audience was, right? Do you remember this part of the conversation where we talked about, you said, I just want to build something for analysts. And I was like, who exactly are you building it for? And so coming from more of a business perspective of looking at what you're doing is what I think a lot of people from private industry ends up the way their mindset is when they start working with academics, which I agree can be incredibly frustrating, because we had multiple sessions where I don't think we were speaking the same language at all. So.
I think that's a really good topic and a really good example. Because when I really started going to FlowCon, first FlowCon was 2013, and then that was just a participation, and then that inspired me to give talks in the later ones, and I've given 3 so far. And one of the things that I didn't know starting out, what does your titles mean? People coming from the academia, coming from the industry, people from academia don't know what you do by your title. So I used to think everybody's an analyst, because the workshops the FlowCon had, the analyst workflow, how to become an analyst. So, and then Ebony, through our collaboration, helped me understand the different roles of different titles in the organization. And first time I remember coming just from the academia and going to a conference as diverse as FlowCon. There's a lot of industry people coming, attending that, and I felt being a little shy and intimidated, because some of the industry people were kind of wary and reserved in some instances, because they're working on classified projects, sometimes DoD and stuff like that. Some people used to say, I left my business card in the hotel room, but that actually code saying that I really can't give that.
Right.
So that was a really, really important eye opener, and I asked these questions because I didn't have anyone to ask these questions, how the other part of the world works, until I met people that helped guide through that process.
Yeah, and I think
Ebony,
also,
one question.
I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
As you and Angel started getting together, you started passing around and discussing various theories and ideas.
Right.
What kind of things were interesting to you as that discussion moved forward? What kind of topics, what was your process by which you settled on something of interest?
So he came to me kind of with like, here's my idea for what I'm working on for my PhD. I want to make sure that, he was talking about reducing analyst burden, which is always something that is important. The more that you can distinguish, signal from noise, you're winning in the analyst world, right? So that was the first thing he said. I want to improve those sorts of processes, and I want to use, things from data science to be able to do that. So as soon as he said that, I said, hey, I know that that's a need. But how are you approaching the problem? So that's kind of where I was coming from. And my thing was always about practicality. It's like, we don't need another tool on the market that claims to do all of that, but really it's just a beautiful UI overlaid on something that's kind of similar. So we started really speaking through that. And as he told me more about what he was doing, I was helping him to kind of identify which part of the analyst population could benefit from it. And we went from there. And then also I helped him do some research into the different products and stuff that were in industry for the type of analyst he was focusing on. And we started doing kind of like, teaching him about competitive analysis and, comparing products to say, okay, this is how where you fit. This is what you're doing is the best thing, does the best thing. And this is where, the other products maybe are doing a better job. You have to be open to both. So that's kind of how we came into it and how we started iterating on it. I thought the idea was great, and I'm always happy to help people who want to bring in new innovative ideas.
Shane, do we have anything from the audience? Muted.
Sorry about that. I was muted. So a good question from Aaron asking, how do you prevent collaborations from simply being a way for academia to gain access to funding or IP? So we're going to address that to Ebony.
So I always, yeah, that's a fair question. I think what my personal opinion is, first of all, sometimes the people who are at the conference aren't the people who control the purse string, right? So you have to understand that first and foremost. When you bring your idea, I think you should kind of do your research before you start talking to people, and not just assume that, hey, this person is from company X. I have this real cool thing. Can you get me funding for this? A lot of times, folks who are from industry are not going to know what to do with that question. And then going back to Angel's earlier point is that then all of a sudden they leave their business cards in the hotel room and they start ducking you at the events because they're like, I can't know what to do. I think what's probably more appropriate is, from the industry side, when you start seeing that, saying, hey, look, I don't know if I can help you with funding, but I'm really interested in your idea. So let's try to talk and see where we can go. From the academic side, don't assume that, again, that person is holding the purse strings. And this is not an easy way to just get in because you met someone at a conference. It's going to take, they're going to run you through some level of rigor. So you kind of have to be prepared for that. So be prepared kind of with like your elevator pitch of what your project's about and what you hope to gain out of it. And then I think start the conversation there.
Yeah, I had a point saved up for the next slide, but I want to give a takeaway point for the audience. If you're from the academia and you want to approach industry, collaborate, I would suggest that you do the research first and bring the idea to the industry people and then talk about it. And then they will guide you through, is this a great idea? Is this something that you should work on? Is this relevant now or in the immediate future, or maybe in a couple of years? Or is it redundant? It's already been done. Some of the research that I've seen some of my colleagues do, and then that's one of the reasons that they stay very long time in their programs, is that their work sometimes is done as a product by a company, or it simply exists, some open source code developer. So it's important to bring your idea and then discuss your idea with the industry early on in your program, either it's master's or PhD. So undergrad also has some research going on, but we're really focusing on the research side graduate program here. So that helped me a lot because I was bringing something to the table. And Ebony was interested in that idea, and she said, yeah, this is great. And I validated the importance of that idea through the other attendees, and not just FlowCon, but also from online resources, platforms. And we have a whole slide coming up talking actionable points that we can take about that.
Okay. Should I move to the next
So-
slide?
So Ebony, actually, before you move on to the next slide, we got the counter question from Josh compared to Aaron's asking, how do you keep collaborations productive, avoid a situation where industry is just raiding academia for people and ideas and things they can productize? So what's your response to that?
This is for me?
Yeah, we're gonna leave that you and
Yeah. Okay, so I think that I feel like you have to come, even from industry, come with a level of respect. This is somebody's life work a lot of times. And you can't just think that you're going to, be able to fleece them for an idea, take their IP. I mean, it's a lot easier to work with the creator sometimes of the product or the idea that they're doing than it is to just take it from under them. I mean, right before this, Angela and I were talking about a story of a company, which I will not name, that kind of did that exact same thing. They saw something that was really cool, just kind of renamed it, and ended up in, legal battle. So I think that there should be a level of respect that happens for academics, but at the same time, academics understanding that, you're going to always have somebody you're talking to that's going to be looking for, like, how do I, make this profitable? But I think that intellectual property is important, and making sure you have your, you don't get into a situation where you bring something into your company and then you end up in legal trouble. So I think for industry folks, they should always think, if I do this the wrong way, am I going to cause more harm to my company in the long run? And if if you're trying to think about staying, in the market, you might not want to have a whole bunch of lawsuits hitting you. So I think respect is the most important when it comes to that.
great answer. Tim, Timur, Angel, anything to add to that one before we let Ebony move on to the next slide?
I think it's also an element of the attitude with which the people come to the conversation. If it's really truly a collaboration, both sides need to be coming with something. And in this particular case, I saw Ebony bringing a lot of technical experience and real world understanding of what the needs actually are. Angel coming with a bit more of a theoretical approach and saying, I've got these options for helping to improve the analyst burden. And that's when it works well. When one side is basically just, okay, impress me, either side, that tends to not be a real good basis for collaboration.
I agree.
And I want to clarify something that audience might be thinking. So are we talking about internships here? We're not actually talking like dedicated time dedicated for industry experience. We're talking about these graduate programs can have collaborations since an early time period. For example, this also flows into our fifth slide, if you can go to that one. So a lot of the times, especially my colleagues and my advisor has also talked about this, a lot of the students cram to get a committee together when they're 6 months to graduation, because that's the rule. You need to have at least have a committee and defended your proposal before 6 months you graduate. So he also agreed that having a committee and having them on board, getting their expertise early on, even during the process of PhD proposal, that's the first milestone you're doing. You need to defend it. If they are on board, they already know what you're doing. They don't need to sit there and read the whole dissertation towards the end of your program, because they've already been through that process and they guide you. They help you do the background research, and like Ebony mentioned, and she helped me a lot in terms of getting the product survey, because what I'm doing is both industry and academia focused. So I need to do both the literature review and the product survey, because I want to do something that's unique that I can be proud of when I am done with my program. And the other thing is, a lot of the times when I had doubts if I should do a PhD, and before I started it, I asked people, should I do a PhD? And a lot of the industry people said, no, you shouldn't because it's a waste of time. I think if you had the right reasons, if you don't, as long as you don't think doing a graduate program is hitting a pause button on your career, it is beneficial because you should continue your career throughout these programs, because when you finish these programs, you become better person, better qualified, better skilled person than you were, and then because you continued that, you're not wasting your time. But if you don't keep that discussion alive, if you don't keep that collaboration alive, then it could be. And for me, especially since I worked a couple of years in the industry, I know that it should matter. This time is an opportunity cost for me. This is costing my time, so I need that to result in good work. So that's why I actively went to venues like FlowCon and proactively reached out to people and as early as possible, and kind of swallow my pride and ask them to please take a step back and let me understand this terminology. What does it mean? Like in the cybersecurity, not everyone is an analyst. There are threat hunters and all kinds of different specializations, and that also helps you stay focused and motivated, because you're working towards a goal. You have these milestones. You get into the mentality of the commercial world. Time is money, and you need to keep focused and motivated and work towards the goal. And one more actionable point that I want to give to the audience is, when you have collaboration going on, you should always constantly update them in a regular basis. And Ebony and I have a system where I email her every weekend what I did. These are the points, and you can tell how bad I was in the beginning. I used to send like huge, like 300 words emails. And then I understood that's not how the industry works. So I need to be concise and very to the point. And the most important thing, I think, is when we do publications, we should make the right assumption, because when you do publications, it's very open field. You can take, there isn't really, you're not grounded. You don't have to be grounded in your assumptions when you write papers and do research. But when you connect with the industry, these assumptions don't hold value if you commercialize a real product or someone wants to buy your product. So you ground your work in reality, and you use your knowledge and theory and do something that's useful for the world. But of course, there are exceptions to this, because some work is purely theoretical, and Tim can pitch in to some of that. So we're talking about like research and people who are motivated to do really good work that they want the industry to adopt. And Ebony, do you want to talk about like how when the academic people make products, they're not really thinking about the user experience, and they're not talking like we had this conversation before.
Yeah, we did.
They're very hard to use because they're not thinking the user focus. Yeah.
This is it's a pretty typical problem in design, right? Where you don't ever check up to see, is this how a person's the workflow, is this how this would work? So we talked a lot about making sure you understood your target audience, and we talked a lot about making sure that you also weren't talking down to your audience. We had that part of the conversation too. So for example, when you are trying to explain your concept, if it takes way too many iterations, I would say, to get the person to understand what you're talking about, you might want to start over and figure out, what am I really trying to convey? Am I trying to convey, like, look at how brilliant my idea is, or am I trying to say, hey, I'm really trying to articulate the need? So we had a lot of conversations surrounding that. And we also had conversations really I feel like nailing down terminology, lexicon, being able to be concise, going back to the word brick thing. I mean, it's it's funny, but it really does illustrate the point. What he's talking about is he sent, like, he would just kind of do like these huge brain dumps in those emails. And I jokingly said to him, I'm probably not going to read this next time. I said, so let me show you how to format it so that there's an actual call to action in what you want to tell me. Is there something that you need me to do? Is this just you trying to inform me what's going on? If there's, because there would be questions embedded throughout the thing. So I sat there and I looked at it and I spent time trying to figure out, okay, what is it that he really, what are the actions he actually needs from me? And the other part was, I told him, I said, for a lot of us, we have to live and die by our calendar. So we kind of have to say, okay, what's the, prioritization? So I think a lot of that goes into, hey, if you want me to spend time to work with you, you kind of also have to understand the culture I'm coming from. So that's a lot of what, we were doing. And it actually kind of bleeds in. I'm going to move to the next slide. The same thing, but yeah, that's where we were coming from, and but it was eye-opening for me because I remember being a student and I remember not knowing a lot of these things. But then after you work in industry for a while, you forget what it feels like to be in student mode and say, hey, this person actually might not have had the same experience as me, so I should let him know so that whenever he is reaching out to other people who might not have the relationship, that he can still move ahead and progress what he needs to do. So, were there any other questions?
Good example. Transition masters, the inactive project I was involved with. Stanford University was one of the partners with that. So when I didn't get them involved in the design process, and then when I finally shipped them the product, they said they gave a bunch of feedback that I haven't thought about. And they showed me what are the industry practices and guidelines. They should be this way. So instead of like a lot of the academic research having to adapt and having to change a lot to adapt to become a product, if you have these people on board to just say a few words and go here, go to this link and look at this, and you will have a better, more marketable, more useful, more user-friendly product in the end. Yes.
So we did have a couple more questions come in, Ebony. So I'm going to open it up to the floor to all four of you, but I do think this one may be for you again, but not to put you on the spot, but we'll open up to everybody.
Okay.
So curious as to how you manage conflicting time frame between academia, which is generally focused on the long term, and then industry, which is immediate or short term. So anybody want to take that one?
I can open up to the floor. I can at least give my perspective on that. I feel like that's a huge issue. For a lot of things, you don't have 3-4 years to kind of delve into just a project. You need to show profitability. I think that gap is going to be hard. And I think a lot of things need to be negotiated up front to say, okay, look, we only can give you X amount of time to kind of noodle this, and we need to see a proof of concept by this time. And I think being very explicit about that up front, I mean, there's always going to be extenuating circumstances, but being explicit about that up front, so that way, a person in academia thinks, oh, I can just spend all this time doing, however long. We're like, no, you actually need it within this time period, because past that, if we can't show proof of concept, we are probably going to have to shut project down. So rather than have good work, I think be clipped short, just negotiating that up is, I think, very important. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on that?
From the academic side, putting that hat on for a minute, because I am a PhD advisor as well as a staff member here at the SEI. Often you're interested in something which will generate a chain of research topics. Mm-hmm. There is the topic that a given student will explore, and often that's going to be something which is more bounded. But from the faculty position, I'm interested in seeing a chain of topics. So when I'm seeking collaboration, often it's in an environment that's somewhat flexible, mm-hmm. where they're looking to see, okay, I've got this large scale concern, and okay, we can try this approach, we can try that approach, we can try this approach, and have several different ideas in the air at once. Each one with a more, with a degree of realism for it. I'm a dirty fingernails kind of guy. Mm-hmm. But you want some capability to support multiple students, to support multiple range of things. And the idea is not to snow the industry with radically different solutions, but to come up with things that can support a whole chain of activity going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to mean, scoping the conversation appropriately. Are we talking about Angel's work? Are we talking Angel's work and then the next student's work? Are we talking sort of the problem as a broad? And as an academic, I sometimes mix those things. But in talking to industry, it's really important to be clear what you're talking about.
I agree.
I have a question for Tim. So since you have advised other students before, what I've noticed that some students don't have a continuation for a project. For example, they have this theory, they have their algorithms, but they jump from application to application. For example, they have learned the theory of, let's say, machine learning or image recognition, and they go, and this is something that happens in the classroom a lot, and I've seen this a lot, is that you learn the theory first, and then you find an application. You go online, KDD or somewhere where the datasets are hosted, and then you randomly look through the dataset and find an interesting application that interests you. Instead of going, maybe asking an expert, what are the current interesting fields, or coming up with the problem first, then choosing the classes, so to speak, sometimes. Do you think there will be it will be something that students should focus on?
There's always the problem of you have a student come through with a solution and he's looking for a problem to apply it to. I've got this neat idea that for machine learning that I want to model, I want to use this model. I'm not really sure what I'm going to use it on, but I want to use this model. And then they try and pick and choose data that neatly fits their model. That often results in rather forced applications, rather artificial applications. It's better to engage with people that have the problem early before you commit to using a particular solution, and get some understanding of what the real need is before you start moving forward. This is talking applied research. If you're talking theoretical research, often you're building off of what is the flow of activity in academia, and what's the next natural topic coming from there. But if you're dealing with applied research, it's often better to engage with the problem first and early, and then go look at the solutions among the various theories that are out there. And that can be a very productive way of moving forward with research.
So we did have a related question from Vince, kind of where we are right now, asking timelines and the conflict between industry's need to create a usable product versus a researcher's desire to take an idea to completeness. Is time or common goals the challenge? And I'll open that up to anybody.
I think that this comes to our next slide, why there is a gap.
Yep.
When we prepared the slide and this presentation, we didn't want to come off as the source saying we made a protocol. This is the way everybody should collaborate. Every research is different. They're, like Tim said, some are very theoretical and they may not see the light of the day for 10 years. And some of them should be collaborated with the industry. Some of them are redundant, has to say that, right? So that's why we need to know what we're doing, what's the need in the, not just the literature, what were the gaps in the literature, but also what's the need, what if there's a need, if there's a need, right, like from the client for the companies that work on these fields. So I will go through some of the challenges that we face going through the academic career. So the first thing is finding the industry partners, and there is no real platform to find them except for like conferences like FlowCon. That's why we need more of those. and more frequently, and online platforms like that. And we have their slide coming into how we're going to approach that. So other problem is how to define the expectations. And I want Ebony to elaborate more on this, because the IP issue, intellectual property, and then academia wants to publish everything. The industry wants to make it into a product, so they don't want to give away how the internal workings of the things that they funded produce. And so defining expectations and communication, how do we actually communicate with these people? And the roles between the academic and industry advisors, we don't want a conflict, because what is the advisor role? So there could be different expectations from different when we consult the industry. And I think Ebony can also talk about how do we define the billable? Like, is it a cost center to what is a cost center that you can allocate these industry people that help academia? So I think if you can elaborate a little on that.
Yeah. So first, to answer Vince's question, but he asked whether it was time was one of the factors, right? I think time always is going to be a factor when you're dealing with private industry. Sometimes you can have, a budget that will allow for, a longer term R&D, and sometimes you don't. It really just depends on the profitability of the company at that time sometimes. But when we're talking about intellectual property, going back to my earlier point, I just think that you need to come correct. I understand a lot of people, academics look at business that all you care about is money. You don't care about like the love of the sport. I said, I don't think that's true. So when you look at the startup arena, I mean, that's exactly where I feel like, really good theory and, profitability kind of can go in. You see something that's missing, if you have, say, for example, an academic theory that you could actually, or product, something that's born out of academia that you could bring to market, you end up being in a place where time still may be a factor, but you still are very, very dedicated to those common goals. So I just really think that it depends on what you're what you're really looking to get out of it. Angela, you asked me one last thing, and I'm trying to, which point where did you want me to elaborate on?
The billable work hours and how to allocate a person in the industry, because at the end of the day, nobody wants to work with the student. Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about this a lot. I don't have necessarily a great answer to it, but we talked a lot about, again, going to call of action. I said, when you're coming from, say, especially from a student or a researcher's perspective, I just think, again, it goes back to that call to action and saying, okay, does this person have time to work with me? Can they either A, they do this project on the side, or B, if they're doing it on behalf of their company, my thing is mostly making sure that the person who's coming from the industry side has actually carved out that time to maybe, if you're depending on how you build, stay billable, and also, carve out that time to work with the student and not say, yeah, I'll work with you, and then kind of get swamped in your day. I don't think that's fair. I was in that position one time, and it really was not a good feeling to kind of be put to the side. You could never get anything done. At the same time, I think also that the student needs to also understand being flexible, because you don't get to always choose how your workday goes. You could have the best laid plans, and it ends up being problematic. But I think good communication is the key to making sure that you can both stay on task.
Yeah, this may sound very trivial, like do communication, but it's really important to get the industry on board. For example, Ebony and my collaboration worked so well because you had a stake in it. You really cared for what I do, and you helped me get product survey and talk to the industry people, get interviews with big companies with products that we thought that we didn't want to replicate. We thought that maybe they may be doing, and they ended up being really good conversations. Some of the founders of the companies even joined some of the conference calls, and I learned a lot because of that. And I wouldn't have been able to reach out by myself because of the preconceived notion of student coming to a company, or they must be asking something for free, right? But you helped me initiate those conversations, and that that resulted in a lot of knowledge being transferred to the student in terms of what I should be doing, what are the deficiencies in the industry. and that so, and that also has to be addressed from the other side. So now the students, if there's any in the audience, they will know that it's important. But also, if there's managers, industry managers, it will be beneficial to have some sort of what do you say that?
We'll let you collect your thoughts there, Angel, for a second, because we do have another relevant one here that I'll get into the mix here, and then we can come back to you as well. Jagannath had a good general question here, saying most of the industries has their research centers where researchers are working to solve their own in-house issues. And why do you think industry will collaborate with academia? I'm going to open that up to all you guys. And before you answer, Josh had another follow-up question to Jagannath's question, was saying, especially if you have a grad student or a postdoc as the academic collaborator, how do you build longer-term, broader collaborative efforts beyond the initial persons, such as yourself? So if anything needs repeated there, let me know, but I'll open that up to the floor.
I can definitely pitch in for the second question, but I think others will do the first one better.
Yeah, I think that actually, can you repeat the first question again? Because I want to make sure I'm hitting all the points.
I can. So what he's saying, most industries have their research centers with in-house, solving their own in-house problems. Why would industry collaborate with academia? What are the other benefits that we have not touched on?
Oh, groupthink. That's the quickest way, I think. So sometimes what happens with internal R&D, there are other pressures that are put on them. It's not like a free range, I can do whatever I want sort of thing. And it also depends on the company. But a lot of times, and I've worked periodically with my company's internal R&D, their strategic development. And a lot of times they were solving that problem specifically for our need, but then never really thought, okay, how do we broaden this out? Or, where's some other applicability and stuff that could be used? I think sometimes getting an outside perspective, or at least saying, hey, I'm looking and tracking this other research here that could probably benefit us if maybe we spoke with that person who's doing it, or or just kind of follow their research. I think it can help inform internally. So that is an incentive. I mean, if competitive advantage is really what a company wants, you want to always have the best ideas flowing through that you can use. So that's why I was out there, and when I was at FlowCon, I was really looking to say, maybe somebody else has, for the problem, the use case that I'm looking at, maybe somebody else has thought through this, or maybe there's a piece that I could bring back in. And if that's the right piece, then maybe I can have, facilitate those conversations so that we can either, figure out, what we could do better. And we were the ones developing it. So I think there's definitely a need to get outside perspective, figure out.
Well,
great answer. Yeah, go ahead.
A venue like FlowCon really is a good choice for things like that, because it is transnational. Timur, you were the program chair for the last FlowCon. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that having people coming from different places is really a tremendous benefit within these research centers. Often they tailor the people that are working on a team to have a very similar background, and the opportunities at a place like FlowCon or an academic industry alliance is that you get to have people with very diverse educational backgrounds and different kind of sweet spots in terms of theory that they understand and the ways in which they can relate it to the work that they've been doing. I think that it's very interesting if you do a survey at some of these security conferences, the number of people who are there who are advancing the industry are not people who are just relying on their CS background. They're relying on other things, being statistics, data science, or whatever. And we see that.
So great answers. Before we turn it over to, I know Angel had an answer to Josh's part. Let me just repeat what Josh's question was. It was building on Jagannath's, basically saying, if you have a grad student or an academic collaborator, how do you build that longer term, broader collaborative effort beyond the initial person? So Angel, I know you had a comment there, so we'll turn it to you.
Yeah, this is probably the most important topic, like the broader topic. And the word I was looking for earlier was provision. Managers should have provision, how their employees can work with the students. So going back to this question, this is really important because, like I mentioned, not wait until the last minute if you're a PhD student to get a committee and then get your work validated. Start early as possible. Do your literature review, and you really need to focus on what you like doing. You can't just do something just because it's useful or the current trend or anything like that. So you need to pick several topics that you like, that you really enjoy working, because it's a time commitment. It's an opportunity cost, and that takes 3 to 5 years for especially a PhD. So start with what you like, and then approach the industry people, and that's a whole different thing. Try to get personal mentors from the industry. And I remember when during the 2020 FlowCon, I specifically asked Ebony, so have you mentored anybody when you're doing, when you're in the government and also the private sector? And then she said that's something she really liked doing. And then I specifically asked her to make me a mentee. I asked her to be my mentor. So that's one thing. So that will get a very that will give Ebony a higher stake in my work, so that she will actively ask. So she will give me tasks and I will report to her. It's like a sort of like industry, employee, employer, but I'm not being paid for that. But she's also not being paid for that. But we're doing it collaboratively because we value the research that's resulting in that. And communication is one important thing. And we talked about this in the morning today, is that ask questions. This is very trivial, but sometimes everybody, this happens to everybody. When you go to that position, you talk from that level. Unless you ask the other person ask that question, they don't know, you don't understand. So ask questions, even though they're dumb questions. There are actually no such thing as dumb questions anyway. So they can then understand what you're coming from. They will directly look at the thing, read the thing. They can introduce you to the people that work on the similar field if they're not working. Like Ebony used to looking for colleagues. They gave me perspectives. One of the questions, for example, was that first question was, yes, sorry about how do you actually commercialize what you're doing? I have never thought of this before he asked this question. So they can give you different inspirations, make you think in different ways that you never thought of, which is important if your plan is going to the industry ultimately. And work with your mentors. That's the biggest takeaway point that I can give.
So if I could ask a follow-up question, are you saying that it isn't the place for collaboration isn't at a startup? You wouldn't want interns or researchers from academia to participate in startups early on?
Absolutely, you should. That's why I tried to clarify early in the conversation, where our focus on this webinar is not the internships, because they're already happening. But what's happening less is graduate programs. Students in the graduate programs only have someone from the industry at the last minute. So I won't describe some of the proposal defenses that I've been to, but they sound very theoretical. They have this cool idea, but it's very apparent that they just Googled the problem and try to apply that problem, like Tim mentioned. They just go shopping for a problem after they get the solution. I think that works sometimes, but I think it's more effective to have the problem before, because like I mentioned, it's a time period that costs time of your life. So why not make it more effective? And it doesn't cost much. It doesn't cost anything, and it just needs a change of perspective, change of work, industry, and academic culture to accommodate these collaborations and an avenue, either online or conferences, something like that, to bring those two realms together.
Okay, so we're going to go back to Ebony. Do you have any other slides, or do we have one more question in the queue if we want to take that now?
I think we have one more slide, but I think that let's take the question, see what the audience thinks.
Well, let's do that. Another one has, do we have any such platform? Do you know of any such platform that exists for collaboration between industry and academia? Or is it always that one-to-one setting?
When they say platform, then you're talking about something more formalized, like
more formal.
industry.
Yeah, exactly. Are you aware of anything like that?
I am not aware of such a platform personally. I mean, if there is one out there, then I would be happy to take a look at it. But personally, I think it's kind of more, it ends up being one-on-one. And I mean, and even in industry, like you're encouraged to stay on top of the totality of your field. So I think for a lot of it is, from the industry perspective, going out and, kind of doing your own research too, and kind of, looking at who's coming up on horizon, reading academic papers. But unfortunately, at least to my knowledge, I don't know any way that's private industry to academia, besides as a platform to Google. I haven't seen it. I open it up to other for that.
Yeah, when I was doing some research before this presentation, I saw a lot of biomedical sciences collaborating with the industry and academia. Not so much as not so much name-worthy collaboration between, like, I haven't seen any big name collaborations, but I think having this talk can initiate some of these conversations, and especially coming from the academia, if students are listening to this, I want them to think about having an academic advisor on board, especially like if you're a PhD, master's. It will be beneficial to, first of all, it will validate your work because they're looking at your work and they are the experts of the field, and they can be the voice that's saying he did something useful. And that's something you can talk when you go to interviews for a job, and that's something you are passionate about. So always do something that's passionate, and that's what I at least try to do. Passion and something that matters in the real world.
Well, this is also part of the SEI's mission as an FFRDC, is to help bring together methods that are being developed and look at the problems that they can be applied to. One of the things that we did very early on, 2001, 2002 timeframe, was to identify network flow data as being a possible solution for building awareness of traffic across a network. And at the time, it was sort of a nascent idea with some beginning tools and with a lot of academic interest in it, particularly like University of Ohio was active in the field at the time. And then we looked at how do we apply it at scale and start building it. And that led to the Silk tool suite and also to Flowcon. That's where Flowcon kind of gets its name, from the network flow data. There are workshops and conferences where you need to find ones which are a little bit more applied and where there's a broad enough community that comes together to talk about it without it being a sell fest, without it being something that's purely geared towards vendors. And that's kind of the sweet spot that Flowcon has been working towards. But there are other conferences out there where there's opportunities to do that, at least in portions like poster sessions and birds of a feather session, where you can get people matching together and communicating together in a more informal basis than just someone up on the stage presenting.
I think a lot of things are happening in the right direction. For example, when I was doing my master's, I really wanted to have a cybersecurity concentration, but it didn't exist in 2016. But 2019, there is a cybersecurity concentration. So I think like that, and going to FlowCon, it used to be very industry focused, but I'm seeing, I've made also a lot of academic friendships at FlowCon 2020. I think there's being a general shift towards more partnerships, more representation, more of different fields and different all sorts of interests, different backgrounds. So I think having conversations like this is important, so that people will notice this and think, someone will say, hey, we should do something about this. So that's my ultimate goal for this conversation today.
So Ebony, any closing comments from you? We're about 4 minutes left in today's webcast, so I'll just maybe give the floor to each of you to kind of wrap it up, and then we'll close this out. So Ebony, we'll start with you.
So I think for how we can improve, I think for academics wanting to approach industry folks, I think also just know your why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you think this is important? And also then how do you think that us collaborating can help drive a common goal forward? So really just know your why when approaching.
Perfect. Tim, closing comments from you.
Here, I think one of the interesting things about having Ebony and Angel communicate here is that they really listened to each other and paid attention to each other, what each other was saying, even working through some communications difficulties in making the conversation move forward. And that's a really useful model to follow, that if you are interested in communicating with academia, communicating to industry, you have to listen to industry. You don't have to be the one talking. And similarly for industry, you sometimes have to draw out and come and identify to the academic person, here's what I need to hear. Here's what I need you to communicate to me. And a lot of the points mentioned early on, I think apply to it here. I think this is a model where if you can get flexible communication moving forward, that's going to be useful. Coming out of the COVID-19 shutdown and the experience we've all had, like this one of operating in distance, some of the traditional barriers might be temporarily weakened, and we've got a target of opportunity to form some useful collaboration.
Great point. Timur, how about you? Any closing comments?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting to me was the conversation about the language that they were using from academia and from industry, and how they had to find a middle ground where they were using the same definitions for things, and the context that they built with each other to set expectations and to understand the different priorities of academia and industry were really important for them for Ebony and Angel to work through early on to be successful. And I think that they did. And as they continue talking, I feel like they are refining their understanding and refining their assumptions of what they can do with the capability and the tech that they're working on. And I'm happy to see it continue.
I really love the final comment. Yeah, I was gonna say, so I said almost pretty much everything I wanted to say, except this one last thing, which is it's useful for not just for your career, but your life to collaborate and learn from the people who are experienced, because they will say what works. For example, work-life balance, one question came up with that too. So I was talking with Ebony how she manages the email, like work email and private email. So when you have that protocol for yourself going forward, when you graduate, you don't need to change too much. I like to set things before and take the time to set things ahead of time so that I don't need to change a whole lot of things. So that has helped me. And she was probably thinking like, I'm asking very trivial questions, but I'm asking them because I want to save my time and I don't want to change how I do things, because she's been in the industry and also academia and even in the government and private sector. So she has a lot of experience. So she helped me streamline my workplace, my emails, the protocols, and how I communicate everything. And I think going forward, that was one thing that's not something I was seeking for, but I got it as a additional benefit from collaborating, talking.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that is a terrific place to wrap it up. So I want to thank you guys for just a terrific conversation today on an important topic. So we appreciate that. We want to thank everyone for their time today, for spending the hour with us to hear about this unique collaboration. And I want to remind everybody, our next webcast will be June 24th. That's next Wednesday. We'll have Matt Makovic and Bobby Stempley talk about organizational resilience in a time of crisis. And everyone will be emailed an invitation to attend that. And lastly, if you like today's event, please hit that like button below, share the content. It will be available here once we close the stream at the same URL. And reminder for everyone to attend FlowCon. I know we mentioned it a couple times throughout today's talk without really getting into what FlowCon is, but it's going to be an online conference this year. Everyone will receive a discount code to attend, and just check out the breadth and depth of speakers that we have lined up for this year. And again, thanks everyone. Have a great day. We look forward to seeing you in future webcasts.